John Boehner. I know his name's not Boehner. I just got so used to calling him Boehner. He was such a dork when he was Speaker of the House, Republican, former Speaker of the House. But his new book is coming out. It's entitled On the House, a Washington Memoir. On the House. That figures. Boehner, you have to understand, is an alcoholic. A wine alcoholic, if I remember my sources. And I really don't give a shit what he is. But how many times did you see him when he was Speaker of the House where the son of a bitch couldn't even sit up straight? Hey, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to do it tomorrow. I mean, but I just don't get along very well with addicts of any sort. I just don't. But that's not the reason I didn't like him. I didn't like him because he was a Republican. He was a real shit. He did everything he could to screw things up for Barack Obama. But anyway, in this new book, according to the New York Times, he has written a stinging denunciation of the Orange Bastard, saying that Trump, quote, incited the bloody insurrection, end quote, by his screwball supporters at the Capitol on January 6th. And he also adds, I mentioned this last week, I think, that the Republican Party has been taken over by what Boehner calls, quote, whack jobs, end quote, whack job. Where the hell did that expression come from? I know it's been around long. Whack, hey, you're a real whack job. What does that mean? Anyway, this criticism of members of his own party, well, it's not his party anymore, but his criticism of members of the Christian fascist movement in this country and the Orange Bastard represents an extraordinary public rebuke from a former Speaker of the House toward a former so-called president of the Speaker's own party. And again, it's one more indication of how much the Republican Party is dead and become the zombie party since John Boehner left Congress just, 6 years ago, 2015, 6 years ago. And Boehner's remarks come as the Orange Bastard has insisted that he still retains his grip on the loyalty of lawmakers who used to be Republicans but are now Christian fascists. And the Orange Bastard does all this from his new political base camp in South Florida, right? Now, even the turtle, that ugly bastard Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader, sharply criticized Trump, you remember, at the end of the Senate trial, when the turtle also voted to acquit this bastard. And after the vote was taken, of course, in order to mollify the big money supporters in the now dead Republican Party, Mitch McConnell had to go on the floor of the Senate and condemn the Orange Bastard in a way that, had he done it prior to the vote taken, it might have convicted this son of a bitch. But anyway, I wouldn't expect the turtle to do anything honest or decent or with any kind of moral segment to it whatsoever. Not Mitch McConnell. So where was I? McConnell also criticized Trump at the end of the Senate trial. We know that. And others like Liz Cheney, representative from Wyoming, daughter of the monstrous Dick Cheney, number 3 House Republican in the leadership role, also has, ripped Trump to pieces. But John Boehner's marks went a step further. And it serves as a rejection of what the party he once helped lead has turned into over the past several years. And as the Times points out, while he has criticized Trump in the past, it's his comments about the events of January 6th that have the most resonance. Somebody ought to tell Boehner that there is no Republican Party anymore. I mean, it still exists on paper. There are still members of the House and the Senate at the federal level and in various states who insist that they are Republicans, but they're not. They're members of the Christian Fascist Party. The Republican Party, there are a few Republicans who are actually now members of the Zombie Party. That would include the angelic, what's her name from Maine? Why can I never remember that woman's name? Another brain fart. But Republicans who still insist they're Republicans are members of the Zombie Party. The Republicans who are the people who used to be Republicans who are now active in destroying the country. They're members of the Christian Fascist Party. Susan Collins, of course, and Linda Murkowski, of course. I mean, both of those Republican senators, Murkowski and Collins, with this, I don't know, this kind of fey attitude of, yes, well, we know he shouldn't have done that. And yes, different time, different place. He probably would go to prison, but I just can't do it. So I'm not going to challenge our beloved President Trump. We heard that for 4 goddamn years. So as far as members of the Zombie Party like Murkowski and Collins, to hell with them. Eventually, they're going to wake up and understand or realize that they are now Christian fascists. Anyway, in an excerpt from this book, which was obtained by the Times, Boehner writes that Trump's, quote, refusal to accept the results of the election not only cost Republicans the Senate, but led to mob violence. It was painful to watch, end quote. And at another point in the book, he writes this, quote, I'll admit I wasn't prepared for what came after the election. Trump refusing to accept the results and stoking the flames of conspiracy that turned into violence in the seat of our democracy, the building over which I once presided, end quote. Well, okay, John. May I call you John? No? You like Boehner? Okay. Speaker Boehner, I'm sorry. Your mea culpas now, or your little statements of wonderment about how such a thing could happen is unadulterated bullshit. And you know this. You're trying to sell books. I get that. No problem. No problem insofar as you're just trying to sell books. So I just wish you'd come out and say it. But it was Boehner's, I'm addressing him. But John, it was you. It was you in a whole succession, a whole string of Republican leaders in the U.S. government or the state governments who led to the creation of this orange piece of vomit, Donald Trump, who wound up as your president, Mr. Boehner. He was in your party. So now, when you come up with all this shit, well, watching it was scary. That's something else. He added this, quote, watching it was scary and sad. It should have been a wake-up call for a return to Republican sanity, end quote. Republican sanity? Okay, I'm trying to remember. Okay, Eisenhower, I guess, mostly. But Republican sanity, Boehner, what the hell are you talking about? Are you talking about the policies that the Republican Party advocated and worked to bring into, make the rule of law starting about 1980, where you participated, Speaker Boehner, you participated in the absolute destruction of the wall between church and state, an old drunk like you, and now you're going to complain about it. Well, that's right, you want to sell books. He also added this, let me see, quote, whatever they end up doing or not doing, he's referring to the divisions between the Republicans and the Democrats in the House and the Senate. And he writes, quote, whatever they end up doing or not doing, none of it will compare to one of the lowest points of American democracy that we lived through in January 2021, end quote. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you think you're writing for history with your book here, John, I'm sorry, Speaker Boehner, you're not writing for history. You're writing for the booksellers. You're writing for the people who may go out and buy your book, although I don't know who it would be. The Republicans hate you now for saying what you're saying, or I should say the Christian fascists. See, it's hard to keep it all straight, isn't it? But you're not writing for history, John, Speaker Boehner. You're writing for the reasons I just said. But anyway, he goes on like this. Trump, quote, incited that bloody insurrection for nothing more than selfish reasons, perpetuated by the bullshit he's been shoveling since he lost a fair election the previous November. He claimed voter fraud without any evidence and repeated those claims, taking advantage of the trust placed in him by his supporters and ultimately betraying that trust, end quote. Ooh, Speaker Boehner, you used the bullshit word. Well, as so many American observers to this political mess have said over and over again, including your humble and obedient servant here, where were you, son of a bitches, in the Republican Party when the party was being slowly eaten alive by the Christian fascists, eaten alive and digested and shat out by the Christian fascists? So what you have now, boys and girls, is the Christian Fascist Party. Where were you? Where were you, leaders? Shit. And then, in an emailed statement in response to all this, a spokesman for the Orange Bastard, you can imagine this guy, his name is Jason Miller, he called Mr. Boehner, quote, a swamp creature. Oh, hey, that's really something there. Hey, way to go, Jason. You really hurt old John Boehner. Yeah, you did. And anyway, Jason Miller also accused John Boehner of favoring, quote, communist China, end quote. Yeah, well, when all else fails, you pull out the Chi-Com card, right? Oh my God, these people, they're not worth the spittle to moisten a parched throat. Oh my God, these people are just awful. But Boehner writes that the Republican Party, quote, must take back control from the faction that had grown to include everyone from garden variety whack jobs to insurrectionists, end quote. Oh, John. Marcia. Take back control from the faction? Boehner, you don't seem to get it. Give me a call, okay? You can get my number. I'm sure it's in the files somewhere. But give me a call, John, and I'll explain to you how full of shit you really are. There is no faction that has taken over your beloved neo-fascist Republican Party. Brother, I hate to tell you this, but I mean, you're from Ohio just like I am, so maybe we have a basis of understanding. But John, listen up here. Your Republican Party is dead, you dumbass. It's dead. It doesn't exist anymore, John. I know that may make you rush for another bottle of Merlot, but it's dead. What you have now, what you're referring to, is the new Christian Fascist Party that, yes, it does include from the garden variety whack jobs and the insurrectionists. That's the definition of your former party, dude. Garden variety whack jobs and insurrectionists. But you're leaving out the Christians, because the Christian fascists are the ones who created their party, the one that you bemoan as though it still existed, the Republicans. But the Christian fascists and the whack jobs and the insurrectionists, they're the ones who put together the Christian Fascist Party. So it's not a segment of or a faction that seeks control. Bro, wake up and smell the Merlot. It's a done deal, John. And you helped it along the way. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.